The White Room felt cold and empty. Commander Vex-High sat across from the human woman, his 4 eyes watching her every move. The translator box between them hummed softly. Lisa Kane adjusted her recording device and looked at the alien warrior. His shell-like skin showed deep scars from battles fought long ago. 3 years had passed since the war ended. 3 years since the Zephyrian Empire had signed the peace treaty with humanity. The neutral moon where they met felt safe, but Vex-High still seemed nervous. His clawed hands moved restlessly on the metal table. Lisa pressed the record button. She had interviewed many soldiers before, but never an alien one. The Zephyrian military had finally agreed to let one of their veterans speak about the war. They chose Vex-High because he had fought humans longer than anyone else who survived. "Commander, thank you for meeting with me," Lisa said. Her voice came through the translator as clicks and whistles in Zephyrian language. "Can you tell me about your first encounter with human forces?" Vex-High's eyes moved around the room again. He had done this same check every few minutes since arriving. Old habits from the war, Lisa thought. The alien warrior finally spoke. "Your people were supposed to be easy to defeat," he said. The translator made his voice sound flat, but Lisa could hear something else underneath. Fear, maybe. "We had beaten 47 other species before yours. None had lasted more than 6 months." Lisa leaned forward. This was why she had traveled to this distant moon. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered half the galaxy before meeting humanity. Their military seemed unstoppable until 3 years ago. "What made humans different?" she asked. Vex-High was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "We expected you to break like the others. When we attacked your outer colonies, we used the same tactics that had always worked. Overwhelming force, superior weapons, fear." The alien commander stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, the barren landscape of the moon stretched to the horizon. No life existed here naturally. It made the perfect neutral meeting place. "I was part of the fleet that attacked Henderson Colony," Vex-High continued. 5,000 humans lived there, mostly farmers and miners. We brought 30 ships and 50,000 soldiers. The battle should have lasted 1 day. Lisa knew about Henderson Colony. It was one of the first human settlements attacked by the Zephyrians. The official reports said the colonists had held out for 2 weeks before military reinforcements arrived. "Tell me what happened there," she said. Vex-High turned back to face her. His 4 eyes seemed to focus on something far away. "We surrounded the colony as planned. Our plasma cannons destroyed their defensive towers in the first hour. Their communication array went down next. Standard procedure was to demand surrender. At this point—" "Did they surrender?" Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. "No." The word came out like a hiss. "Instead, they attacked us." Lisa felt confused. "Attacked you? How? You said their defenses were destroyed." "With farming equipment," Vex-High said. "With mining tools. With vehicles not meant for war. A human named Jake Miller led a group of miners against our forward position. They used explosive charges meant for breaking rocks." The alien commander sat back down. His claws scratched against the metal table. "Jake Miller lost his leg in the explosion that destroyed our command post. We thought he would die quickly. Instead, he crawled across 50 meters of open ground, still firing his weapon, still giving orders to his people." Lisa had heard stories like this from human veterans, but hearing it from the enemy's perspective made it different, more real somehow. "That was just the beginning," Vex-High continued. "We regrouped and prepared for a proper assault. But the humans had used those first few hours to prepare. They had dug tunnels under their buildings, set up hidden weapon positions, turned their entire colony into a maze." The alien warrior's voice grew quieter. "We sent in assault teams, elite soldiers with the best equipment. The humans were waiting for them, not with military weapons, but with improvised traps. Explosive devices made from fertilizer. Projectile weapons built from construction tools." Lisa made notes as Vex-High spoke. The official military reports had mentioned civilian resistance, but not in this detail. "How long did the battle last?" she asked. 14 days, Vexhai said. 14 days of the strangest warfare any of us had ever seen. The humans never stopped adapting. Every tactic we used, they found a counter for. Every weapon we deployed, they found a way to steal or copy or destroy. The commander paused and looked directly at Lisa. On the 13th day, something happened. That changed everything for me. I was leading a squad through the colony's main street when we encountered a human child. Lisa felt a chill. A child? Yes. A girl, maybe 12 of your years old. She was alone in a destroyed building. My soldiers wanted to capture her for information. I thought she would be terrified. Vexhai stood up again and walked back to the window. Instead, she looked at us with no fear at all. She asked if we were the aliens her father was fighting. When I said yes, she smiled. Then she triggered an explosive device that brought down half the building. The room fell silent except for the humming of the translator. Lisa felt her heart beating faster. What happened to her? She died, Vexhai said simply. But she took 3 of my best soldiers with her. A child, Lisa Kane. A human child chose to die rather than let us pass. The alien commander turned back to face her. That was when I first understood that we were not fighting soldiers. We were fighting an entire species that would rather die than lose. Every human, from the youngest to the oldest, was a potential warrior. Lisa looked at her notes. She had planned to ask about military tactics and weapon technology. Instead, she found herself learning about something much more disturbing. The reinforcements arrived the next day, Vexhai continued. Human military ships with trained soldiers. But by then it did not matter. The civilians had already shown us what we were truly facing. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Vexhai sat back down and leaned forward. Your military was professional, skilled, disciplined. But the farmers and miners and children of Henderson Colony had fought us with a fury that no trained soldier could match. They fought like cornered animals, except animals eventually surrender or flee. The alien commander's 4 eyes focused on Lisa again. Humans never surrendered. They never fled. They just kept fighting until they won or died. And somehow, they usually won. The recording device continued to capture every word. Lisa realized that this interview was going to reveal much more than she had expected. The war between humans and Zephyrians had lasted 3 years, but it seemed like the real story was just beginning. Lisa Kane watched as Commander Vexhai moved his clawed hands in small circles on the table. The alien seemed to be gathering courage for what came next. The translator hummed between them, waiting for his words. After Henderson Colony, our high command changed tactics, Vexhai said finally. They decided that humans needed a different approach. More pressure, more fear. They sent me to lead the attack on New Denver. Lisa knew about New Denver. It was one of the most famous battles of the war. A human colony that had held out against impossible odds for 6 weeks. The military had studied it as an example of successful defensive warfare. New Denver was much larger than Henderson Colony, Vexhai continued. 200,000 humans lived there. We brought 3 times as many soldiers and 5 times as many ships. The plan was to crush them so completely that other human colonies would surrender without fighting. The alien commander stood and walked to the far wall. His 4 eyes seemed to be seeing something else, somewhere else. We surrounded the planet, completely. No ship could get in or out. No message could be sent. We cut off all supply lines and destroyed their orbital platforms. Lisa made notes as he spoke. The official reports had mentioned the siege, but hearing it from the Zephyrian perspective added new details. How long did you expect the siege to last? She asked. 3 days, Vexhai said without turning around. Maybe 5 at the most. Our experts calculated their food supplies, their ammunition, their medical resources. Everything pointed to quick surrender once they realized their situation. But that didn't happen. No. The word came out as a low hiss. Instead, something impossible occurred. The longer we kept them trapped, the more dangerous they became. Vex High turned back to face Lisa. His scarred shell caught the light from the room's single window. Colonel Ben Hayes commanded their forces. We intercepted some of his communications in the first week. He was telling his people that help was coming, that they just needed to hold out a little longer. The alien warrior sat back down heavily. We knew this was a lie. No human ships could break through our blockade. But Hayes kept saying it anyway. And somehow his people kept believing him. Lisa leaned forward. What happened in the second week? They started rationing everything, Vex High said. Food, water, ammunition, medical supplies. But instead of weakening them, this seemed to make them stronger. They became more organized, more efficient, more deadly. The commander's claws scratched against the metal table again. Lisa noticed he did this when talking about particularly difficult memories. We began landing ground forces in the third week, he continued. Elite assault troops with the best equipment. The plan was to take key positions and force surrender. But the humans had spent those weeks preparing. Vex High paused and looked directly at Lisa. They had turned their entire city into a weapon. Every building was a fortress. Every street was a trap. Every alley could hide soldiers with explosives. Lisa made more notes. The transformation of civilian areas into military positions was a classic human tactic, but she had never heard it described this way. "Tell me about the fighting," she said. Vex High was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. It was unlike anything in our military training. We would take a building after hours of fighting, only to discover that the humans had already moved to the next one. They left behind traps and ambushes that killed our soldiers for days afterward. The alien commander stood and walked back to the window. Sergeant Amy Ross led one of their units, a small woman, maybe half the size of our soldiers. But she commanded her troops like they were extensions of her own body. They moved as one unit, struck as one weapon, disappeared as one shadow. Lisa felt impressed, despite herself. "You remember individual human soldiers?" "Oh yes," Vex High said. "We studied all of them, tried to understand their tactics. Amy Ross would receive orders from Colonel Hayes, but then she would change them, improve them, make them work better for her specific situation." The alien turned back to face Lisa. "This confused us greatly. In Zephyrian military, orders come from above and are followed exactly. Chain of command is absolute. But humans seem to treat orders as suggestions." Lisa smiled slightly. "That sounds like human military culture." "It was terrifying," Vex High said, not returning the smile. "We could never predict what they would do because they were constantly adapting. Our battle computers could not calculate odds against an enemy that changed tactics every few hours." The commander sat back down and leaned forward. "In the fourth week, something even stranger happened. The humans began attacking us." Lisa felt confused. "Attacking you? But they were surrounded and outnumbered." "Exactly," Vex High said. "Any rational species would have focused on defense, conservation of resources, waiting for rescue. Instead, small human groups began launching raids against our positions." The alien's 4 eyes focused on something behind Lisa. "Captain Steve. Carter led many of these raids. He was an engineer before the war, not a soldier. But he understood our equipment better than some of our own technicians." Vex High paused and made that scratching motion with his claws again. "Carter's raids were not random attacks. They were surgical strikes designed to capture specific equipment or destroy key resources. He would study our patrol patterns for days, then strike exactly when we least expected it." Lisa made notes about the engineering background. Human civilians transitioning to military roles had been common during the war, but the effectiveness surprised even human command. The psychological effect on our troops was severe, Vex High continued. They had come expecting to fight a desperate defensive enemy. Instead, they faced humans who attacked with precision and confidence even while completely surrounded. The alien commander stood again and began pacing around the small room. By the 5th week, my soldiers were afraid to sleep. The humans had learned our duty schedules and were launching attacks during shift changes. They knew our weak points. Better than we did, Lisa looked up from her notes. How was that possible? They were learning, Vex High said simply. Every engagement taught them something new about us, our weapons, our tactics, our psychology, and they shared this information instantly across their entire force. The alien stopped pacing and looked directly at Lisa. In the 6th week, we intercepted another communication from Colonel Hayes. He was still telling his people that help was coming, but this time, something was different. What do you mean? Lisa asked. His soldiers were laughing, Vex High said. Even though they had been under siege for over a month, even though they were running out of everything, they were laughing at their commander's joke. The alien sat back down slowly. That was when I realized that we had completely misunderstood the situation. We thought we were breaking them with pressure and isolation. Instead, we were making them stronger. Lisa felt a chill despite the warm room. How were you making them stronger? Vex High's 4 eyes focused on her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Because humans don't break under pressure, Lisa Kane. They adapt to it. They overcome it. They use it as fuel to fight harder and smarter and longer than should be possible. The alien commander leaned back in his chair. On the 42nd day of the siege, human reinforcements finally arrived. A small fleet that somehow broke through our blockade. But by then, it almost didn't matter. Why not? Lisa asked. Because the humans inside New Denver had become something we had never faced before, Vex High said. They were no longer the colonists we had surrounded 6 weeks earlier. They had transformed into the most effective fighting force any of us had ever encountered. The translator hummed as Vex High fell silent. Lisa waited, knowing there was more to this story. The reinforcements didn't rescue the colonists, the alien finally continued. The colonists rescued the reinforcements. They had turned a siege into a trap, and we were the ones who were trapped. Lisa felt her heart beating faster. The official reports had mentioned the successful defense of New Denver, but this version of events was completely different. How? Long did it take for you to retreat? She asked. Vex High made that scratching motion with his claws one more time. We didn't retreat, Lisa Kane. We fled. The silence in the room stretched for several minutes. Commander Vex High sat motionless, his 4 eyes staring at the metal table between them. Lisa Kane waited patiently, her recording device capturing every moment of quiet. She had learned that the alien warrior needed time to process his memories before sharing them. After New Denver, everything changed for us, Vex High finally said. Our high command realized that standard tactics would not work against humans. They called it the adaptability crisis. Lisa looked up from her notes. Adaptability crisis. Yes, the alien commander said. Every species we had conquered before followed predictable patterns. They used the same weapons, the same strategies, the same thinking throughout entire conflicts. This made them easy to defeat once we understood their capabilities. Vex High stood and walked to the window again. It seemed to be his way of gathering courage before discussing difficult topics. Humans were different. They learned from every battle, every mistake, every small victory or defeat, and then they shared what they learned with others. The alien turned back toward Lisa. I first understood this during the Battle of Titan Station. We had been fighting humans for 8 months by then. Our intelligence estimated their capabilities based on previous encounters. We were wrong. Lisa made notes as Vex High continued. Titan Station had been a major industrial facility before the war. The battle there had lasted 3 weeks and ended in Zephyrian defeat. Commander Ryan Clark led the human defense, Vex High said. He had studied every Zephyrian attack pattern from the previous 8 months, not just his own battles, but reports from other human forces across multiple star systems. The alien commander sat back down slowly. Clark knew how we would attack. Before we did, he had analyzed our assault doctrines and found patterns that even our own strategists had not noticed. Lisa leaned forward. What kind of patterns? Timing, positioning, resource allocation, Vexhai replied. Our forces always attacked in the same sequence. Heavy bombardment first, then ground assault, then occupation. The intervals between each phase were consistent. The number of troops used for each objective followed mathematical formulas. The alien's claws scratched against the table surface. Clark had turned Titan Station into a maze designed specifically to counter our attack patterns. When we began bombardment, we hit decoy targets. When we landed ground forces, they walked into prepared kill zones. When we moved to occupy positions, we found them already abandoned. Lisa made careful notes about the tactical analysis. How could he predict your moves so accurately? Because humans share information differently than other species, Vexhai said. In Zephyrian military, knowledge flows through official channels. Reports go up the command structure, orders come back down. Information moves slowly and gets filtered at each level. The alien commander leaned forward. Humans seem to pass information laterally. A tactical discovery made by one unit appears in modified form across multiple fronts within days, sometimes hours. Lisa felt intrigued by this observation. Can you give me an example? Vexahai was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Lieutenant Kate Brooks was an engineer assigned to a small outpost on Kepler 186F. During a Zephyrian raid, she captured one of our plasma rifles. Standard procedure would be to send it to human military intelligence for analysis. The alien's 4 eyes focused on Lisa. Instead, Brooks took the weapon apart herself. She studied its power systems, its targeting mechanisms, its cooling systems. Then she rebuilt it using components from destroyed human equipment. Lisa made notes as Vexhai continued. The ingenuity of human engineers during the war had become legendary, but hearing specific examples was fascinating. Brooks's modified weapon was 30% more efficient than the original, the alien said. It could fire longer without overheating and had better accuracy at long range. She shared her modifications with other engineers at her outpost. Vexahai stood and began pacing around the small room. Within 2 weeks, similar modifications were appearing in human weapons, across dozens of different battles. The improvements spread through informal networks faster than our intelligence could track. The alien stopped pacing and looked directly at Lisa. But that was not the most disturbing part. The modifications were different at each location. Human. Engineers had taken Brooks's basic concept and adapted it for their specific situations and available resources. Lisa felt amazed despite herself. They were improving on her improvements. Exactly, Vexhai said. And each improvement was shared again through those same informal networks. Within a month, human forces were using plasma weapons that were more effective than our own original designs. The alien commander sat back down heavily. Our weapons designers had spent decades perfecting those rifles. Humans improved them in weeks using scrap metal and battlefield salvage. Lisa looked at her notes. The pattern Vexhai described was troubling from a military perspective. How did your forces adapt to this? We tried, Vexhai said. Our command issued new equipment and updated tactics regularly, but humans adapted faster than we could respond. Every countermeasure we developed was obsolete before we could deploy it effectively. The alien's claws made that scratching motion again. The siege of Titan Station lasted 3 weeks, but the real battle was fought in the first 3 days. After that, Commander Clark was always one step ahead of us. Vexhai paused and looked out the window at the barren moon landscape. On the final day, something happened that broke our understanding of warfare completely. Lisa waited patiently for him to continue. We had one assault team that managed to reach the station's command center, HFY said. They cornered Clark and several of his officers. It should have been over. The alien turned back to face Lisa. Instead, Clark smiled. He told our soldiers that they had walked into the only place on the station where he wanted them to be. Lisa felt a chill. What happened? Clark had rigged the command center with explosives, HFY said. But not to destroy us. The charges were designed to collapse specific sections of the station's structure and create a chain reaction throughout our assault routes. The alien commander's voice grew quieter. Clark sacrificed himself and his command staff to trap our entire assault force. But before he triggered the explosives, he transmitted the complete tactical analysis of our attack patterns to every human unit in the system. Lisa made notes with shaking hands. The sacrifice at Titan Station was known to human history, but not these details. 3,000 of our best soldiers died in that collapse, HFY continued, but the tactical information Clark transmitted was used to defeat Zephyrian forces in 17 different battles over the next month. The alien was quiet for a long moment. One human commander had analyzed our entire military doctrine, found its weaknesses, and shared that knowledge with his entire species. Even his death became a weapon against us. Lisa looked up from her notes. How did that affect Zephyrian? Morale. HFY's 4 eyes focused on something far away. Our soldiers began to understand that they were not fighting individual humans or even human units. They were fighting the entire human species working as one organism. The alien commander leaned forward. Every human who died taught the survivors something. Every battle lost made the next human defense stronger. Every tactical innovation spread through their forces like wildfire. Lisa felt overwhelmed by the implications. It sounds like humans were evolving during the war. Yes, HFY said simply. And we were not. The alien stood and walked back to the window. After Titan Station, our high command realized that traditional military thinking would not work against humans. They began developing new strategies, new technologies, new approaches to warfare. HFY turned back toward Lisa. But by then, it was already too late. Humans had learned to learn faster than we could adapt. Every move we made, they had already anticipated and prepared for. The recording device continued to capture every word. Lisa realized that this interview was revealing fundamental differences between human and alien thinking that went far beyond military tactics. The next battle was even worse, HFY said quietly. That was when we discovered what humans could do when they stopped holding back. Commander HFY sat motionless for a long time. His 4 eyes stared at the metal table, but Lisa Kane could tell he was seeing something else entirely, something that still haunted him after 3 years of peace. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Proxima Base, he said. That was where everything changed for us, where we learned what humans really were. Lisa had heard of Proxima Base. It was mentioned in military reports as a significant battle, but details were classified. She waited for HFY to continue. The base was strategically important, the alien commander said. It controlled shipping routes to 3 star systems. Our high command decided it had to be taken quickly and decisively. HFY stood and walked to the far wall. His clawed hands moved restlessly at his sides. We sent our largest assault force yet, 100,000 soldiers, 50 capital ships, enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. The alien turned back toward Lisa. Major Lisa Chen commanded the human defense, 3,000 soldiers and civilian volunteers. The odds were 33-1 in our favor. Lisa made notes as HFY continued. The numbers alone showed how desperate the human situation had been. We expected to take the base in 6 hours, HFY said. Our battle computers calculated complete victory with minimal Zephyrian casualties. The humans would surrender or die quickly. The alien commander sat back down slowly. We were wrong about everything. Lisa looked up from her notes. What happened? HFY was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The first wave of our assault went exactly as planned. We destroyed their defensive platforms, their communication arrays, their weapon batteries. Proxima Base was defenseless. The aliens' claws made that familiar scratching motion against the table. That was when Major Chen did something that no Zephyrian commander would have considered. Instead of preparing for siege or attempting escape, she ordered an attack. Lisa felt confused. An attack? Against overwhelming odds? Yes, Vexhai said, but not a military attack. Something much more disturbing. The alien commander stood and began pacing around the small room. Chen had studied our species during the months of warfare. She knew our psychology, our fears, our evolutionary weaknesses. Vexhai stopped pacing and looked directly at Lisa. Zephyrians evolved as prey animals on our homeworld. Deep in our genetic memory are instincts that helped us survive against pack hunters. Chen understood this. Lisa made careful notes. The psychological aspects of warfare between different species was a topic rarely discussed in official reports. Lieutenant Tom Baker led the first human assault team, Vexhai continued. 12 soldiers moving in perfect coordination. They approached our positions using tactics that deliberately triggered our ancient survival instincts. The alien's voice grew quieter. They moved like pack hunters, silent, coordinated, predatory. They used vocalizations that sounded like hunting calls. They struck at our weak points with surgical precision. Vexhai sat back down and leaned forward. My soldiers, veterans of dozens of campaigns, began to panic. Not because of superior weapons or tactics, but because of something deeper, something primal. Lisa felt disturbed by the implications. They were using your evolutionary psychology against you. Exactly, Vexhai said, but that was only the beginning. Chen had divided her forces into small teams, each one using different psychological tactics based on Zephyrian biology. The alien commander's 4 eyes focused on something behind Lisa. Captain Alex Morgan led another team. Morgan was a medical officer who had been studying Zephyrian casualties throughout the war. Morgan knew exactly how to inflict maximum psychological damage with minimum actual harm. Lisa made notes about the medical background. The use of medical knowledge for psychological warfare was a troubling development. Morgan's team would wound our soldiers in ways that triggered specific fear responses, Vexhai continued. Not fatal injuries, but ones that activated our panic instincts. Soldiers who should have fought effectively instead became paralyzed with terror. The alien commander stood again and walked to the window. Within hours, our massive assault force was fragmenting. Unit cohesion broke down as individual soldiers reverted to primitive survival behaviors. Vexhai turned back toward Lisa. But the worst part was realizing that humans had been holding back during the entire war up to that point. Lisa looked up from her notes. Holding back how? Captain Alex Morgan had been documenting Zephyrian casualties from the beginning of the conflict, Vexhai said, studying our biology, our psychology, our weaknesses. Morgan had enough information to devastate our forces months earlier. The aliens' claws scratched against the table again. The humans had been moderating their tactics to avoid triggering total warfare. They were trying to keep the conflict limited, manageable, civilized. Lisa felt a chill despite the warm room. What changed? Vexhai was quiet for a long moment. Diplomatic channels broke down completely just before the Battle of Proxima Base. Peace negotiations failed. Both sides realized the war would continue until one species achieved total victory. The alien commander sat back down heavily. That was when humans stopped pretending to be civilized. Lisa made notes with shaking hands. The implications of what Vexhai was describing went far beyond military tactics. The Battle of Proxima Base lasted 6 days, the alien continued. By the 3rd day, my soldiers were afraid to leave their fortified positions. By the 5th day, they were afraid to sleep. Vexhai leaned forward. Human teams led by officers, like Lieutenant Tom Baker and Captain Alex Morgan, had learned to exploit every weakness in Zephyrian psychology. They turned our own survival instincts against us. The alien's voice grew even quieter. On the 6th day, something happened that convinced our high command to begin considering peace negotiations. Lisa waited patiently for him to continue. Major, Lisa Chen herself led the final assault, Vex High said. She walked alone into our command center. No weapons, no armor, no backup. The alien commander's 4 eyes focused on Lisa with disturbing intensity. Chen had been studying our command structure throughout the battle. She knew exactly which officers to approach and what to say to trigger maximum psychological impact. Lisa felt her heart beating faster. What did she say? She told us that humanity had been patient with us so far, Vexhai replied. But that patience was ending. She said humans had been fighting with restraint, but they were prepared to show us what unrestricted warfare looked like. The alien was quiet for a moment. Then she showed us classified human military files, plans for psychological and biological warfare that made our worst fears look like children's games. Vexhai stood and walked back to the window. Chen explained that humans had survived on a world filled with apex predators, that their entire evolutionary history was shaped by being both hunter and hunted simultaneously. The alien turned back toward Lisa. She told us that every human carried within them the genetic memory of survivors. That warfare was not just a skill for humans, but their natural state. Lisa made notes, despite her trembling hands. The picture Vex High was painting of human nature was terrifying even to her. Then Major Chen made an offer. The alien commander continued. Surrender Proxima Base immediately, and she would ensure that Zephyrian casualties remained minimal. Continue fighting, and she would demonstrate what humans could accomplish when they stopped holding back. Vex High sat back down and looked directly at Lisa. We surrendered within the hour. The recording device continued to capture every word. Lisa realized that this interview was revealing truths about her own species that she had never considered. But surrendering one battle was not enough, Vex High said quietly. Because after Proxima Base, every human commander in the war stopped showing restraint. The silence in the room felt heavy and oppressive. Commander Vex High sat motionless, his 4 eyes staring at nothing. Lisa Kane waited patiently, knowing that whatever came next would be the most important part of their conversation. The alien. Warrior seemed to be gathering courage for one final revelation. 6 months, Vex High finally said. The war lasted 6 more months after Proxima Base. 6 months of the most terrifying warfare the galaxy has ever seen. Lisa made notes as the alien commander continued. The final months of the human Zephyrian War were classified at the highest levels. Few details had ever been released to the public. Our xenobiologists had been studying human civilization throughout the conflict, Vex High said, trying to understand our enemy's capabilities. What they discovered changed everything. The alien stood and walked to the window one last time. His reflection in the glass looked old and tired. Humans were not like any species we had encountered before. Every other civilization we had studied developed by minimizing conflict and maximizing cooperation. Vex High turned back toward Lisa. Humans had evolved differently. Your species spent millions of years as both predator and prey on a world filled with creatures designed to kill you. Lisa felt uncomfortable hearing her own species described this way, but she continued taking notes. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, global floods, the alien commander continued. Your planet tried to exterminate humanity dozens of times, but humans survived everything. Vex High sat back down slowly. Our scientists realized that human psychology and physiology were shaped entirely by survival pressures that would have destroyed any other species. The alien leaned forward. Every human, From civilian engineer Paul Davis to frontline warrior Captain Sandra Martinez, carried within them the genetic memory of survivors. Not just individuals who survived, but an entire species that had refused to go extinct. Lisa made careful notes about the genetic memory concept. It was a theory she had heard before, but never in this context. The final 6 months of the war showed us what humans could accomplish when they stopped pretending to be civilized, HFY said, when they embraced their true nature as the galaxy's ultimate survivors. The alien commander's claws scratched against the table surface. Captain Sandra Martinez led human forces in the Battle of Wolf 359. She had studied every Zephyrian defeat from the previous 2 years and developed tactics that exploited our every weakness simultaneously. HFY's voice grew quieter. Martinez did not just defeat our forces, she psychologically destroyed them. Soldiers who survived her battles required medical treatment for trauma that lasted years. Lisa looked up from her notes. What kind of tactics was she using? Tactics designed by a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history learning how to kill or be killed, HFY replied. Martinez understood that defeating an enemy's will to fight was more effective than simply destroying their forces. Dastfi, alien commander, stood and began pacing around the small room. Human forces began using biological warfare, psychological warfare, information warfare, and forms of combat that we had never imagined possible. HFY stopped pacing and looked directly at Lisa. But the most terrifying discovery came when our intelligence services analyzed human military capabilities. Lisa waited for him to continue. The humans we had been fighting for 3 years represented only a tiny fraction of your species' total military potential, HFY said. The entire war had been fought by volunteer forces from frontier colonies. The aliens sat back down heavily. Your homeworld, your core systems, your main population centers had never been threatened. Earth itself had contributed almost nothing to the war effort. Lisa felt shocked. Almost nothing. Some equipment, some supplies, some technical expertise, HFY said, but no significant military forces. The humans who defeated the Zephyrian Empire were essentially colonial militia and volunteers. The alien commander leaned forward. Our intelligence estimated that if Earth and the core human systems had been directly threatened, they could have fielded military forces 50 times larger than anything we had faced. Lisa made notes with trembling hands. The implications were staggering. But even that was not the most disturbing part, HFY continued. Our xenobiologists calculated that human industrial capacity could support much larger military forces if necessary. Your species had been fighting a limited war with minimal resources. The alien's 4 eyes focused on Lisa with uncomfortable intensity. If humanity had treated the conflict as a threat to species survival rather than a territorial dispute, the war would have lasted weeks instead of years. Lisa felt overwhelmed by these revelations. Why didn't they? Because humans were being merciful, HFY said simply. Your leaders understood that total warfare would result in the complete extinction of the Zephyrian species. They chose restraint instead. The alien commander stood and walked back to the window. That was when our high command realized that continuing the war would be species suicide. Not because we lacked the strength to fight, but because humans had been allowing us to survive. HFY turned back toward Lisa. The peace negotiations began immediately after our intelligence reported these findings. We surrendered not because we were defeated, but because we finally understood what we were facing. The alien sat back down and leaned forward. Humanity had demonstrated the ability to defeat our empire using only a small portion of their total capabilities. They had shown mercy when they could have shown annihilation. Lisa made final notes as HFY continued. The peace treaty was signed quickly because our leadership realized that humans were offering us something precious. The chance to coexist with a species that could destroy us but chose not to. The alien commander's voice grew very quiet. "I have seen what humans are capable of when they stop being civilized, Lisa Kane. I have witnessed the fury of a species that survived everything the universe could throw at them." Vexhai stood for the final time and walked to the door of the interview room. "Your people allowed my people to surrender with honor and maintain our territory. But this mercy should not be mistaken for weakness." The alien turned back one last time. "Humanity is the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because they choose not to be dangerous most of the time. They have the power to destroy civilizations but prefer to build them instead." Lisa looked at her recording device, still capturing every word. "Do you think the peace will last?" Vexhai's 4 eyes focused on her with something that might have been respect. "As long as no one is foolish enough to threaten human survival directly. Your species has shown remarkable patience with the galaxy's various conflicts and territorial disputes." The alien commander opened the door but paused before leaving. "But if anyone ever threatens Earth itself, or human civilization as a whole, they will discover what 3 billion years of evolutionary pressure can create." Vexhai stepped through the doorway, then turned back one final time. "I hope the galaxy never gives humanity reason to show their true nature again." The door closed with a soft click, leaving Lisa Kane alone in the white room. Her recording device continued to hum quietly, having captured one of the most disturbing interviews in galactic history. Lisa sat in silence for a long time, processing what she had learned. The war between humans and Zephyrians had ended 3 years ago, but the real story was much more complex than anyone had realized. Humanity had won not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through something much more fundamental. They had survived as a species by becoming the ultimate adaptable predators, capable of learning, evolving, and overcoming any threat. And they had chosen to use that capability with restraint and mercy, even when facing an enemy that showed them none. Lisa finally turned off her recording device and gathered her notes. The interview with Commander Vexhai would change how the galaxy understood humanity forever. For better or worse, the truth about human nature was now documented. Outside the window, the barren landscape of the neutral moon stretched to the horizon. No life existed here naturally, making it the perfect place for species to meet and share their deepest truths. Lisa Kane left the White Room carrying knowledge that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She had come seeking information about military tactics and battlefield strategies. Instead, she had discovered the terrifying reality of what humans could become when their survival was truly threatened, and the even more terrifying fact that they chose not to become that most of the time.